Then we wonder why people are upset with the Republican Party.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, baby, welcome into the Voice of Reason. It is the day we look forward to every single week. It is a Thursday. It is the pre-Friday celebration, and it is going to be one heck of a show today. Welcome in, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on TV as well, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning, welcome aboard. It's great to have you along. Boy, we got a fun one today. It's going to be a good time. It is always open line to you at 316-721-8255, 316-721 Talk. I am dropping in just the last couple of here. I don't know, show of hands for everybody if you were aware yesterday that there was actually a governor's debate in Kansas City. Were you aware of this? I was not aware of it until it was actually really going on. I didn't even see it. I watched the last little bit of it. We do have some audio clips. I do want to play some of those today for you as they covered a lot of ground. First off, they ran a tight ship. It was a PBS station up in Kansas City, and it was from the Kansas City Bar Association. So it was that's who it was brought to you by. So it was full of lawyers. It was full of quote-unquote legal scholars. I don't know if you want to call them legal scholars, but nonetheless, they were lawyers that were there. I was curious to see, of course they didn't ask this, but I was really curious to see if they were going to talk about the process of nominating Supreme Court justices and see whether they would be like, yeah, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have all the power being able to nominate Supreme Court justices. So I got a bunch of audio clips. We'll play those here in just a second, but welcome in. Good morning to you. It is a Thursday. It is a beautiful morning, nice and cool this morning. Coming up on the program today, a guest that we've been trying to get on for a while. We appreciate him agreeing to come on the show. He's going to be in studio for about, 20 minutes, half hour or so. They said maybe not a full half hour, but I'm going to try and squeak that as much as I can. But James Thompson, Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District against Congressman Ron Estes. So here's the question that I have for you. If you have a question that you want me to ask at James Thompson, I'd love to hear from you. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Now, I already have my you know me, I don't really go by a script on what I'm going to talk to people about. I kind of wing it on myself because I already know what we're talking about, what the topic is, and I'm very curious about certain things, and I already ask questions that I'm already interested in. And I usually don't have a script. I do have a couple things that I do want to mention to him, but it's going to be an interesting discussion. I told them when we scheduled this interview that obviously this is a conservative talk show. This is not like an NPR thing. It's not just a very bland, just whatever, this sort of thing. This is a conservative talk show. And the one who brought in Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and all these other progressives and rallying the extreme progressive fringe, I want to do some debating. I want to spar a little bit. I want to have some fun. Now, it's going to be civil, obviously, but it's going to be fun. So we have that coming up at 8 o'clock today. James Thompson, Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District. Also, at 8:30 today, Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, who was just off the debate stage yesterday. We will try and get all the candidates on here relatively soon because there's the debate that was yesterday. There's another debate coming up on Saturday at the Kansas State Fair. More information to come up on that as well. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be talking to someone from the Kansas State Fair because it kicks off tomorrow. Can you believe it? It's going to kick off tomorrow. This really proves that this is the best time of the year. The changing of the seasons, the falling of the temperature. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be nice. We have high school football tomorrow as well, but we have the kickoff of State Fair, and Saturday is going to be political day. We'll have more information on that a little bit later, but it is going to be political day. A lot of candidates up at the Kansas State Fair. The debate that's going to be going on at noon at the Kansas State Fair. So all around, it's going to be a really exciting day. It's going to be an exciting week next week. We are going to be broadcasting live up there from noon to 1 every single day day from Monday through Friday next week. When it comes to the Kansas State Fair, Rick Everett's going to be broadcasting live up there, so get set for that. Big news, big stuff happening, and it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. But until then, it is open lines to you at 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's start off with this. The debate yesterday in Kansas City for the governor's race. Their opening remarks, of course, I got to say, Laura Kelly, yeah, what the heck, Dems? I'm sorry, but Democrats, WTF, yo, it's kind of interesting candidate that you've chosen. Starting off, they talked about, of course, their opening remarks, but then their priorities of what they want to do in the state of Kansas. Now, everybody's got their pet little projects, but it's so obvious. It's so obvious. It's so blatant. It's so absurd and ridiculous of what the priorities are for the Democrats, and she's running on really a two-platform campaign. A two-platform, and guess what those are? Guess what those two priorities are? Just a shot in the dark. Education and the expansion of Medicaid.
I think there are three major issues that I'm hearing from constituents. Obviously, education is number one, but also our infrastructure, whether it's roads or broadband, the second. And then thirdly, it's health care. They want Medicaid expansion. They want it now. Those are the kinds of things that when I'm governor, I'll make sure that we can do. We've had to cut all of those kinds of things because of the Brownback tax experiment that really took our state down a road of devastation, whether you're looking at our roads, our healthcare, or our economy. We need to reverse that, and that's what I'll do as governor.
There it is. That's Laura Kelly. That's the opening remarks, the priorities of what she'd like to see when if she becomes governor. And first off, very mundane, very just, this is what we're going to do, and that's about it, and that's all it's going to take. Education, Medicaid expansion. Now, again, she mentions, here's the tactic, and we told you this at the very beginning. We'll have to play the clip again before they even started campaigning. There's going to be three things that she's going to really run on, and that is education, more government spending, and Brownback's evil. Brownback's evil. Let's get rid of the Brownback stuff. Let's repeal the. First off, no, we did not cut anything. We borrowed money from different agencies. We borrowed money from transportation. We borrowed money from capers. It's not a good deal because we tried to balance the budget because you're spending too much, because we've never cut any money ever, ever, ever. We've never cut money from the state budget. The state budget has increased year over year over year over year over year over year. Tell me something. When you're in litigation for more money to go to a certain program like, education, and you're in litigation and you're going to the state Supreme Court and the court's deciding on whether you have to have more money or not, and the state Supreme Court tells you need more money, and the legislature abides by that by raising your taxes and raising spending. Tell me how there's a cut anywhere in there in any way, shape, or form. Yes, we borrowed money. Now, again, with capers, though, we borrowed money, but we borrowed money from projections out 30 years, so it's not even affecting anybody's caper plans currently right now. But that's another story, right? We don't want to talk about that. Yes, we borrowed money from transportation, and we actually held off on many bridge projects. Yes, we've held off on many projects in the state of Kansas. Guess what? Kansas highways are still number 2 in the entire country. I really don't want to hear about complaining and moaning about why we're borrowing money from transportation right now when we're still number 2 in the nation for the best state highways. Give me a break. Everywhere else, we haven't cut a single penny. We haven't cut a single penny anywhere at all. But yet, the Brownback cuts and things aren't doing well, and we just need to expand the government, need to expand spending, need to expand the programs. It's the typical crazy left-wing progressive, and people actually believe it. That's the scary part. People actually believe it. Chris Kobach, his opening remarks and priorities if he were governor.
Without question, the number one thing I hear about is taxes. Like I said, we're the high tax state, the 5-state area. We had a record-breaking sales tax hike in 2015, and I'm sure you all see that when you go to make purchases, and a record-breaking income tax hike in 2017. The combined impact of those two tax hikes on the average Johnson County household is $1,244 a year. $1,244 a year out of your wallet, in addition to the previous taxes you were paying. That's a family vacation. That's food on the table. That's all kinds of things that could be used for your households. And Topeka is not managing the money like we would manage our money in a law firm or manage our money in a household. Instead, the spending just keeps going and going and going. And I'll agree, under Republicans and Democrats administration, the spending has just been going like this. I will rein in spending. Topeka doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem, and I will solve that problem.
There it is. That was Chris Kobach with his priorities, and as a conservative, I would agree with that. We got a spending problem, and we'd lower taxes, and not only would we lower taxes, we're going to reimburse you taxes. Look, we have 2 reimbursements the state needs to be doing, and Chris Kobach mentioned both of them. The other 2 candidates, as far as I'm aware, have not. I can ask Greg Orman about it today at 8:30 when he comes on the show. But Chris Kobach mentioned 2 reimbursements for Kansas taxpayers. Number 1 was the retroactive tax increase that we did last year from January to July. That was a ridiculous retroactive tax we shouldn't have done. He wants to reimburse us that money. Number 2, I don't know if you're aware or not, but when Trump did the major tax cuts at the federal level, we did not see that tax break in our pockets. We did not see it here in the state of Kansas. Why? Because the state of Kansas got the lump sum of the money that was returned back to the state. The state chose to hold on to it as a government entity and not release it back to the people. And Chris Kobach wants to give that back. Those are 2 reimbursements. Just imagine. We could be getting some mighty hefty, nice little checks back to us as Kansas workers, as taxpayers, if we actually gave us back and reimbursed us the retroactive tax increase from last year, gave that money back, all that to the average, if you remember, when people filed their taxes in April of this year, the average amount that people owed in the state was $2,000 to $2,500 that they owed to the state of Kansas because of that retroactive tax increase. And you could be getting that back. Then we turn around and say, yeah, you know what, that major Trump tax cut, we didn't really get to feel the full effect of that here in Kansas because the government held on to it. Just imagine that. Trump cuts taxes at the federal level. They do a reimbursement. They send money back to the state of Kansas, and the government says, yeah, you know what? It's our money. We're going to hang on to it. We're not going to release it back to the people. We're in a bad situation right now. We're in a bad deal right now. Brownback really pulled the wool over our eyes and did a whole bunch of terrible things while, cutting taxes before. So we're going to hang on to that. Well, we're not going to release it back to the people. We're going to hang on to it as a state government. Can you imagine the lunacy there? Can you imagine the stupidity at that point? Greg Orman, his opening statement and priorities.
I travel the state, and I clearly hear issues like public education, health care. Those are clearly things on people's mind. But at the end of the day, Kansas faces a demographic challenge. Our state is aging. Our kids are leaving the state. If we are going to be able to create the jobs and opportunities that keep our kids here and have the resources to invest in infrastructure, to invest in public education, to invest in health care, we have to grow the Kansas economy. What we have had historically has been a series of tactics. What we need is a proactive economic development strategy, and that's one of the things that we have highlighted as our number 1 priority. We've got it on our website. It's available. We have a very detailed plan that focuses on leveraging our strengths, overcoming obstacles to economic development, developing our workforce, and ultimately addressing our reputational deficit so that we can get people to move to Kansas.
Here's the thing, and Greg Orman, that was the independent candidate with his comments, and here's the interesting part. Greg Orman really does play, I got to give him credit here, he really does play the independent, taking a little bit from both sides mentality. At least that's what he's portraying here. If you listen to that really closely, and if you take away something from that statement, what does he say? First off, we need to invest in business, grow the economy. He's a business guy. He owns business. He's worth a lot of money. That's a good sign. He wants to invest to be able to create jobs and be able to get the economy back on track. That's a good thing. But if you take the second part of that, why in his term does he want to do that, is for part 2 of the plan is once the economy grows, he wants to grow it to invest in infrastructure, to invest in healthcare. He wants to expand the government. He wants to expand the spending. He wants to expand government projects and programs, but he wants to at least do it not by just raising taxes, but by growing the economy. So at least we're growing the economy, and that's a good sign, but then he wants to use the growth and utilize it for the benefit of the government. See what he's he's kind of played it right there on both sides. The conservative side, let's grow the economy. That's fantastic. That's a great thing to do. Then let's go and use that and benefit it for the government by increasing projects and programs and spending at the government level to make nice government health care, to make nice government projects, to do this and do that. Really doing a good job playing the whole independent thing and taking stuff from both sides, isn't it? Kind of interesting. 316-721-8255. That was a debate again last night in Kansas City. I want to talk about that quite a bit today on the show because they touch on a lot of different topics, and we'll go through each one of them today. Your phone calls as well. We'd love to hear from you on a pre-Friday celebration. It's going to be a heck of a show today. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss a bit of the show at all. If you do, we have the podcast. First off, what the hell's wrong with you? But if you do miss it, we have the podcast. We have the online streaming today, facebook.com/1480 KQAM, on the TuneIn app, and at KQAMradio.com. 22 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
27 minutes past the hour. Welcome into The Voice of Reason on a Thursday, the pre-Friday celebration. It's going to be a heck of a day. Welcome in. You see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're waking you up, getting you pumped up, ready to go for the day, getting you informed on the major issues. Yeah, baby. 316-721-8255. Let's go right to the phones here. Line number one. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen.
Good morning, Helen. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Well, you said what kind of questions that we would like to ask these candidates?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd like to ask all of these candidates if when they're sworn in to uphold the Constitution, how familiar are they with the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence?
Well, that would be a very good question because I'm sure that some of them maybe haven't even read much of the Constitution in order for them to even be in office, which is very concerning to me because if they're going to uphold the Constitution, if they're going to put their hand on the Bible and they're going to swear that they're going to uphold the Constitution as the law of the land, if they are advocating for something unconstitutional, then that's something very concerning to me. If they're going to be advocating for universal health care, if they're going to be advocating for, something off the wall crazy, then, they need to be aware that that is very unconstitutional. So that's a good point. How familiar are you with the Constitution?
And Declaration of Independence.
And Declaration, sure. I mean, it's if you understand the history of the nation and why we left Europe, if we left Great Britain, if we left England and the largest, most powerful country in the world at that time, then there's got to be a reason for that. So that's a really great point. Helen, appreciate it very much. How much are you familiar with that? How much do you understand the reasoning on why we did what we did? Good point. All right, well, we'll put that one on the list there to be able to ask. Got some more calls on the line. Don't go anywhere. We'll take a bottom of the hour break here. We'll touch on some more of the debate that happened yesterday with the governor's candidates here in the state of Kansas. Also get ready for our interviews coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. Good morning to you. Stay right here.
I can feel you all around me, beckoning the air, everything, holding on to what I'm feeling, savoring this high.
Now back to the KQAM News Desk.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Right on! Let's do it! Rock that world! Rock that world!
Give him a call at 721-TALK.
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Starting off your day better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. Speaking of, by the way, for the first time in probably over a year, I had a small cup of coffee this morning. I know. Craziness. Never thought that something like that would happen. Welcome in. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Laura Kelly at the debate last night, Democratic candidate for the governor's race in the state of Kansas.
What we look at is what happened over these past 8 years to make it stop growing. It was cutting our education system, it was cutting our roads and transportation system, and it was not expanding Medicaid. Those are the kinds of things that we've got to do if we're ever going to grow this economy.
Okay, so we need to grow the economy by growing the government. The economy can't grow, the private sector can't grow until we grow the government, and it's all Brownback's fault. I mean, get ready. This is going to be the talking points, the campaign talking points for the entire election. It's Brownback's fault, Brownback fault, Brownback fault. Increase taxes, increase spending, increase government, and expand Medicaid and more education. That's all. I mean, we summed up Laura Kelly's entire platform right there. You realize how, like, she's so unexcited? So unexcited. Just, we're going to raise taxes. We're going to expand Medicaid. That's just what we got to do. I talked to a lot of people, and they're really upset. We got to expand Medicaid. That's just what we're going to do. Boy, you got to have a little bit of charismatic character. A little bit of character, don't you? Just a little bit of excitement when you're running for governor. Hey, we're going to do this. People are excited. We're going to get pumped up. We're going to go crazy. No, we're going to expand Medicaid. It's going to be great. We're going to get some more money in education, and we're going to do it. It's going to be fantastic. We hate Brownback. Let's go to the phones. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, good morning, sir. How are you?
Oh, great. My question would be to all of them is that before we ever grow government, what's your plan to make the government more efficient? Okay, and also is where do you stand with Article 5 of Convention of States?
That would be a really good question. Now, it's funny you mentioned the efficiency of government. Let me find the clip here. Clip number 8. Laura Kelly asked Chris Kobach yesterday in the debate, as he says, we need to cut taxes and we need to cut spending because we have a spending problem and not a revenue problem. And she kind of went on the attack a little bit and actually went after Chris Kobach saying this yesterday.
I hear Chris say over and over, all we need to do is cut and things will be fine in the state of Kansas. And we can cut taxes, we can cut programs. What I've never heard him tell us is exactly what he would cut. Are we going to cut schools? Are we going to cut foster care? Are we going to cut roads? What are you going to cut, Chris, to pay for your tax cut?
What are you going to cut to pay for your tax cuts? Because, it's getting money away from the government back to the people. That's just a really dumb thing. What are you going to put those children out on the streets in the foster care program because we're going to shut down are you going to cut the education system because the children already are suffering with the bad education system? And are you going to cut that? What are you going to do, Chris Kobach? What are you going to cut? Come on. Ron, what do you think?
Well, that's still not answering the question. There are efficiencies that you can get, that's laying out there. One be administration realignment in the education system.
Sure.
Because all the money is at the top.
Well, of course.
Classic example right now, all you have to do is go into KPI and look at some of Dave Traubert's figures and the amount of percentages of right now, all this money that they're going to get.
Right.
Where is it going? It's going to raises to the top. The teachers aren't going to get anything. In fact, the janitors are getting more money.
Sure. No, you're right. And I mean, we know this. The government obviously is very top heavy. For a side like the progressives and like for big government entities, even with Republicans, many of the establishment Republicans who despise smaller government and actual conservatism, that they, for ones that hate the trickle down system, quote unquote, if you want to call it that, I don't like calling it that, but if you want to call it trickle down economics in the private sector, they love top heavy government. Where's the trickle down there in the public sector? They love the administrators having the money. They love the regents, the board of regents, and all the KNEA and all the unions and everybody else to have the money. And then it trickles down slowly but surely to the teachers and to the actual public employees and to everybody else that should benefit from these things, but it doesn't get there. It stays top heavy, and then they turn around and criticize the fact that we don't have enough money. And I know that, come on, it's government. There's always ways that you can trim the fat off of government. There's always ways that you can consolidate agencies. You can get rid of agencies. You can cut the budgets of agencies. They don't have to grow exponentially every single year, or else Even if we talk about slowing the growth, that we're looking at a cut. You and I both know this. The Democrats and the progressives don't get this. They think that they are absolutely on skeleton budgets right now. They think that Brownback slashed all their budgets by 50+%. They think that they're on the brink of closing right now, and that all of us just need to cough it up and pay our fair share because we're not paying enough into the government to let the government help us grow.
Well, another one is open requisitions to agencies. A few years ago, that was worth, on a 2-year budget, $34 million because they don't turn the money back in if they don't fill the vacancies.
Sure.
Okay, they could put that back in the state general fund, but do they do that? No, because none of them have enough backbone up there to pass a bill that says, say, after 90 days, if you can't fill this rec, you turn the money back. Now, if you do hire somebody, we will have some money set aside, and we'll give it to you so you can hire the people you need. To me, that sounds reasonable.
No,
but
sounds
do they
reasonable.
ever give the money back? No. And then you ask, well, what did you spend the money on? And nobody knows what they spent the money on.
Sure.
They can't tell you.
Well, that's very true. Ron, I appreciate it, my friend. Well, those are all great questions. Those are all great questions. What are we going to cut? What are we going to trim? What are we going to do? Because, as you know, it's government. It's government. You remember the old saying, it's good enough for government work. You're working on your house. You're building a garage. You're building even just a little deck. You're building a couple stairs. You're working on your car. And you didn't quite get things aligned a little bit. Looks a little cockeyed. Maybe you built a little tree house for the kid, and it's tilting a little bit, and things aren't straight. And whatever. It's government. It's good enough for government work. There's a reason there's that saying, is because government's not efficient. Government doesn't work. I'm glad you brought up the whole education thing because there is a lot of trimming, as you know, 53% of the budget. If you are going to cut anything, as I've said many times before, you need to address the largest piece of the pie, education obviously being the largest piece of the pie. And if we are going to cut, that may be where we need to look, and obviously not taking anything out of the classroom, but consolidating maybe the administration a little bit to save some money. Cha-ching, baby. Maybe being able to trim some of the fat from the number of superintendents or deputy superintendents, maybe consolidating some different school districts, maybe being able to not have as many people in the office pushing the papers as opposed to the number of teachers actually in the classroom. There was and I'm glad this was brought up, but they did ask the question yesterday about a constitutional amendment in the Supreme Court when it refers to educational funding in the state of Kansas. Chris Kobach had to say this.
Yes, I support such a constitutional amendment. We have a constitutional crisis right now in Kansas. The judiciary has assumed the appropriations power, which the Kansas Constitution in Article 2, Section 24 very clearly gives only to the legislature. The judiciary is now in decision after decision saying, no, this amount of money is not enough, spend this amount of money. Alexander Hamilton wrote in Federalist 78, I'm sure many of you remember this from constitutional law, he said that we need not fear the judiciary because it has neither the power of the sword nor the power of the purse. The Kansas Supreme Court has seized the power of the purse. It is outside of its constitutional role. So that is one constitutional problem we have and needs to be corrected. The second is it's absolutely butchering Article 6, Section 6 of the Kansas Constitution, which says the legislature shall make suitable provision for the funding of schools so that no child needs to pay tuition to attend a public school. That is almost an exact paraphrase. It doesn't say each child gets an adequate or super adequate amount of money. The Kansas Supreme Court is out of its lane and has misinterpreted the Constitution. That must end.
I really wish that during debates that we would talk about less topics and to give them a little bit more time. I don't know if you watched it or not last night, but it was very, very fast. It was very quick. Each response to a question was 60 seconds with a 30-second rebuttal. That was it. They got a minute and a half to talk about the entire topic before they moved on, and it's very quick. And especially for three candidates, give them a little bit more time, let them talk for 2 or 3 minutes, and then be able to move on, sort of thing. I wish that maybe we should try and host a debate between. I don't know if it could be possible or not, but I'd love to, and be like, you know what, you got 3 minutes to talk about it, and then you got a minute rebuttal afterwards, and we're going to touch on 3 topics. and we'll go back and forth and we'll discuss this. And then we'll do another one, 3 topics. That way we're not being overwhelmed here, because that's a really short amount of time to go through all of this. Laura Kelly had to say this when it came to education and the constitutional amendment.
No, I do not believe that we need a constitutional amendment. The people in the state of Kansas made it very clear when they included it in the Constitution that we needed to provide suitable education for our kids. And the court just upheld that ruling. They did not appropriate the funding. The legislature appropriated the funding. We appropriated enough funding this past year.
Stop. Hold on a second. The Supreme Court, they're not bullying us. They're not telling us what to do. You know, they just said whether it was adequate or not. The legislature actually funded the education system by force of the courts. We would have been perfectly content with the old formula before we did this whole revamping thing, being able to reapply money to the classroom and not to the administrators without having to apply a single penny more in funding. And then you're upset of the fact that we actually had to do that. This is the difference here. The legislature, they were the ones that appropriated the money. The Supreme Court didn't do that. They had nothing to do. All they just told us was whether it was adequate or not. They don't have the power to do that. And when we appropriate it, then we should say, all right, that's enough. Power of the purse. We did it. We decided how much money actually goes into it. End of story. Until the Supreme Court comes back and says, yeah, no, you got to do it again. All right, let's give a little bit more. No, that's not enough. We can't tell you how much, but it's not enough. Yeah, the Supreme Court has absolute full control of the entire situation right now. It is the parent that's telling the children what to do. It's the bully on the playground telling every other kid what to do on the playground because they think they have the power, because they think they have the control. Blows my mind.
No, I do not believe that we need a constitutional amendment. The people in the state of Kansas made it very clear when they included it in the Constitution that we needed to provide suitable education for our kids. And the court just upheld that ruling. They did not appropriate the funding. The legislature appropriated the funding. We appropriated enough funding this past year to nearly pass court muster. We do need to come back and deal with the rate of inflation. Because we overturned the Brownback tax plan, we now have the funds in the kitty to be able to take care of that in January when we get back in the legislature.
Notice the talking points over and over. Because of the Brownback plan, because of Sam Brownback, because of the Brownback plan, because of the Brownback tax cuts, because of that, now we're doing better. Now we actually have the money. Now we just got to do it on inflation. Give me $100 million a year, $90 to $100 million a year. Based on inflation. Tell me what system can't possibly survive unless you have $100 million more every single year. Not the same, not just maintaining, but more, $100 million more every single year based on inflation. And if you don't do that, then we're impossible to stay open. We are impossible. It is absolutely unattainable for us to actually keep the doors open every single year and get our kids an education. We have to increase it $100 million every single year at the minimum. Doesn't make any sense to me. Greg Orman, same question.
You know, I think it's helpful that the Supreme Court flagged this issue for us. Ultimately, it's up to the legislature and the governor to provide for suitable education. I don't think it makes sense to have a constitutional amendment while we're in the middle of a lawsuit. But I think the bigger issue here that we're facing is as it relates to education, we're coming at it from answers driven by 2 failed playbooks. You know, I hear from many on the far right, we need to go to private school vouchers. You know, there's one private high school west of Wichita.
What?
How does a private school voucher solve a problem for a kid in Colby, Kansas? On the other side, we hear we need to pour hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into the top of the funnel. I want to do what a business person would do. I want to focus on the root cause of the problem. And ultimately, and my wife's a public school teacher, I support public schools. You know, she said something to me that made a whole lot of sense, and that is the best education policy is a growing economy. If we grow our economy, we're going to have the ability to provide for public education in a suitable way without increasing taxes.
That was Greg Orman on that one. Didn't really answer the question. I think we're going to have to try and clarify a little bit when he comes on the show today. Do you support a constitutional amendment? He said he didn't see the need for it during litigation. That's the whole point of the constitutional amendment, is to end the litigation, because litigation's been going on for 50 plus years. So I kind of want to ask him that when he comes on the show today, because that didn't make any sense to me. I don't think we need a constitutional amendment because there's litigation going on. That's the whole point. Because the Supreme Court doesn't need to tell us that that's not adequate enough and that we need to revamp it again for the 15th time, for the 50th time every single year, or else we get the threat of, I might have to shut down the schools. And then, I mean, I agree that, the best education is a growing economy. Okay, that's great. How are we going to stop the administration at the top? How are we going to stop the administrators taking the money? How are we going to stop the school boards appropriating money wrongly in their districts and then saying that we need more money and, oh, you taxpayer Joe Schmo need to pay more money in taxes because you're not paying enough? We have one of the highest property tax rates. We have ridiculously high sales tax rates. Our income tax rates are going back up, and they're saying that we need more money. What are we going to do to fix that? A growing economy is nice, but we can grow it all we want to. If the burden's still there, we're not going to feel the growth of the economy. We need to do the relief part of that. So I agree to an extent, but how do we do that? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We'll take a break, wrap up hour number 1, get your phone calls. Lots more to come up to on the show when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
What we look at is what happened over these past 8 years to make it stop growing. It was cutting our education system, it was cutting our roads and transportation system, and it was not expanding Medicaid. Those are the kinds of things that we've got to do if we're ever going to grow this economy. I think there are 3 major issues that I'm hearing from constituents. Obviously, education is number one, but also our infrastructure, whether it's roads or broadband, is second. And then thirdly, it's health care. They want Medicaid expansion. They want it now. Those are the kinds of things that when I'm governor, I'll make sure that we can do. We've had to cut all of those kinds of things because of the Brownback tax experiment that really took our state down a road of devastation, whether you're looking at our roads, our healthcare, or our economy. We need to reverse that. And that's what I'll do as governor.
Oh, man, this is going to be a fun election season. Let me just tell you something. This is going to be a really, really, really fun election season. And, running for a high-profile political office like, governor of the state, you have to be a little bit charismatic. Now, I've never said this in my life before. I've never thought of this. I've never considered it. And, being a whole independent run with Greg Orman, I've never really considered independents having much of a chance. I almost wonder if Greg Orman is going to do better in the race than Laura Kelly. I'm just saying, I don't know that Laura Kelly is going to have a whole lot of support. I really don't. And some individuals may support her just because she's got the D in front of her name and she's the far left progressive that's embraced the progressive mentality, I just don't know outside of that fringe if there's a whole lot of support for that. It may come down to a Chris Kobach, Greg Orman run. That would make the state of Kansas and politics in Kansas very, very interesting. Got to wrap up hour number 1. Got some calls on the line. We'll start off with you in hour number 2. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
All summer long, we've been talking about appropriations bills. What's happened? We haven't passed a farm bill. We haven't passed any appropriation bills. We haven't built the wall. We haven't funded the wall. We haven't reformed SNAP. We haven't reformed Social Security. We haven't cut any of the social spending. We haven't done anything that we said we were going to do, and then we wonder why people are upset with the Republican Party.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, baby, welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on TV as well, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning, welcome aboard. It's an honor to have you along today on a Thursday, the pre-Friday celebration. Moving right along. That's the way we roll. That's what we like to do. Waking you up better than we know how to do so every single day. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, it is open line 2 for this hour. Coming up in hour number 3, we have James Thompson, Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District, joining the program. At 8:30, we have Greg Orman, independent candidate for governor, joining the program, talking about the debate last night, the upcoming debate at the Kansas State Fair on Saturday, and a lot more. So it's going to be full in hour number 3, which, by the way, I usually only schedule one guest a day. Greg Orman, that was the only time that he was able to join, so we ended up getting him on that show. But it's going to be really difficult because I want to be able to dissect what we talk about with James Thompson after. We're not going to have a whole lot of chance to do that today, so we'll have to do some of that tomorrow. But it is going to be interesting to be able to talk with James Thompson, as I've kind of used him as the center of attention as examples that I've used on the show before. Whether they like that or not, I don't really know. But we'll get James Thompson on the show here at 8 o'clock and chat with him. Looking forward to doing so in just an hour from now. 9 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. I don't know if you're aware or not, but there was a debate last night up in Kansas City from the the Johnson County Bar Association or the Kansas City Bar Association, and they sponsored it. They hosted it. It was in the middle of the afternoon, and it was from the PBS station in Kansas City that ended up hosting this debate. I did have to laugh. And we played some of the clips in the first hour. We'll play some more of those here coming up. I do have to laugh, though. One of the last questions that they asked was their thoughts on President Donald Trump and their support of something that he's done well at, and something he hasn't done well at, something they've agreed with and disagreed with, the pros and cons of President Donald Trump. Now, as you know, a governor works a lot with the federal government, works with the president, works with different agencies, works with things to be able to relate to the state of Kansas or to the state wherever they're from. And so it is important to have their finger on the pulse at the federal level and to have a relationship at the federal level. There were some really interesting comments as they talked about their pros and cons of President Donald Trump.
Support the most would be the Trump tax cuts. Oppose, it's a tough one. I suppose I'd say I oppose the delay in reversing the DACA amnesty that the Obama administration did unconstitutionally through an executive order. President Trump eventually got there. I just would have gotten there faster. Sorry, I couldn't give you a more vigorous opposition. But look, the Trump tax cut, let's talk about that. That is something that has got the national economy moving. Kansas, however, in 2017 was one of 3 states that had negative economic growth. The other 2 were Louisiana and Connecticut. So we have negative growth because of our high taxes. Meanwhile, the rest of the nation is booming. Cutting taxes does have a stimulative effect on the economy. And then the legislature failed by about 5 votes to pass on the Trump tax windfall that was created at the state level. If we had mirrored the federal changes, we could have given $137 million total to taxpayers in Kansas. That's going to be one of the first thing I ask for as governor, is to pass that windfall on to the people of Kansas.
All right, so that was Chris Kobach. I do find that kind of funny. I can't really give you a definitive negative thing that he's really done. I really like the fact that he did the Trump tax cuts. I'm a big fan of that. I guess that if we have to do something negative, it would be the fact that it took him so damn long to be able to repeal DACA. We did get there, but it was kind of a pain to do so. I kind of like that. That's kind of a funny response. Now, you didn't hear a chuckle in the room at all because the majority they're lawyers. It's the Bar Association. They're the legal, quote-unquote, scholars that think they know more than us, and they're smarter than us because they went to law school. So, therefore, they're a lot smarter than us, and therefore, they're the elites. They're the ones that like to sit back and say, yep, and Donald Trump, he's a terrible human being. He's probably a racist, and he knows nothing about the way the government's supposed to work by going through the grind, not really getting anything done, going through the motions, trying to find legal loopholes left and right. He's not the best president that we've had. So they didn't really laugh at anything like that. But, we got a nice little chuckle with this response from Laura Kelly.
I think the thing that I most abhor about the Trump administration is the divisiveness, the incivility, the xenophobia, the misogyny that comes out of that administration on a regular basis.
Okay, first off right there, shocker, right? Yeah, he's a racist, he's a xenophobe, the misogyny, just the division that he had. We're not divisive by calling him and every one of his supporters racist. Nah, we're not divisive, we're just calling it the way it is. But, he is really one, and I just don't like that. So that's why I abhor Donald Trump, because he's just a terrible, him and all of his supporters, they're all racist, they're all terrible, they're all, what do they call it? Deplorables. Continue.
I think it's tearing our country apart.
You're
and
not.
I think we
We
need
are, right?
a uniter,
Yeah.
not a divider.
Yeah.
So that's what I like the least about the Trump administration. In terms of, I've been racking my brain here trying to think of what do I like the best. And I suppose maybe putting golf back up at the high level of giving it a lot of attention that the sport desperately needed.
Wow. The only thing that he's done good, I guess, is putting golf back up there. Because, George W. Bush never played golf. Barack Obama never played golf. Nobody ever played golf other than Donald Trump because he owns golf courses. So therefore, it makes it not only does it terrible that he plays golf and he takes a break from the presidency, not even taking a break, but that's how, if you know politicians, that's how they go about negotiations, is they go out to dinner or they go on a crazy binge or they go play golf or they go to a strip club. That's what many politicians do to make their deals. And it's a double whammy because not only does he play golf, but he owns the golf course. Yeah, I know. So there you go. That was Laura Kelly. The only thing I guess he's done good was that he put golf back up at the top of people's sports to watch. And people laugh at that. That's supposed to be funny. And people laugh at it. Oh, man. Yeah, you can tell what room you're in. I guess it's really no surprise. You know what room you're in. You know your crowd. You got to play to your crowd. It's very unpopular to be a Chris Kobach there. It's very unpopular to be a conservative. It is popular to take a little jab at Trump and say that he loves playing golf and that I don't know anything that he's actually done good. But, it is true that, I really don't like about Donald Trump is he's very divisive. What did Greg Orman have to say?
Look, I appreciate his support for apprenticeship programs and his support for technical education. If you look at the OECD, there are 34 countries in it. Only one of them values a technical education as much as an academic one, and it's Germany. And it's no surprise they have a $300 billion trade surplus and almost a $70 billion trade surplus with the United States. I think we need to do more to allow kids to have pathways into those technical programs. I actually call it professional education because I think if you're a plumber, you're a welder, you're a professional in my mind. In terms of the things that most concern me, as a Kansan, I'm concerned about his approach on tariffs. Ultimately, I understand the strategy, but I think it's a very risky approach. And if we end up in a real trade war with someone like China, it might prevent the supply chains that we've built from being used and ultimately lead to a devastation again for our ag economy, and that concerns me.
That was Greg Orman. I agree with that response. I like it. Taking the business approach as he's tried to do throughout this entire campaign of all about the economy, all about growing the economy, all about getting jobs, and that's a very safe answer to say, and I agree with it. I do agree with it. I do agree that, number one, we need to focus on the educational side for the higher education for different trade schools or different specialty programs and that sort of thing. And then, I've never been a fan of, I wouldn't have gone with the trade thing. What I would have said if I disagreed, and again, obviously he can say whatever he wants to, whatever, but if I would have had to say something I disagree with, what I would have disagreed with is not the trade deals necessarily, but the punishment of corporations for the manufacturing sides. Because I would have created more incentives to create business here and create manufacturing to come back, as opposed to punishing companies for doing so. Just because I like the decision to be made based on incentives of the private sector, not punishments of the private sector. And I would have gone that way. But that's a solid answer. I don't like the trade deals. And he even says, I understand it. I know exactly where he's coming from. But I would be critical of that if I had to be critical of something. So that's a good answer. I like that. Kind of interesting, isn't it? 316-721-8255. What did you think? Did you watch the debate yesterday? Did you pay attention to it? If not, does any of these things change your mind about the candidate that you may or may not support? If you're undecided right now, maybe you're one of those middle of the road. I'm not quite sure. I don't like Chris Kobach. I'm not too sure. I don't like Laura Kelly. Not sure about Greg Orman. If you're one of those that's maybe unsure, I'd love to hear from you. Does any of this make sense to you? Does this make you help make you make a decision for who you're going to be supporting in November? What I really, really hate and what's really, really dumb and stupid is someone that says I'm going to be undecided up until the day of the election. Give me a break. There's divisive candidates. They're very polarizing candidates. They're very different candidates on all three of the levels, no matter which one you're looking at, Republican, Democrat, or Independent. And if you're still on the fence, then that means either you haven't paid attention or you're just looking for attention. If you are one of those undecideds right now, Does any of this make sense to you, and does this make you lean towards one candidate or another? I'd love to hear from you. 316-721-8255. 18 minutes past the hour. We'll take a break. We'll get your calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
3 minutes past the hour. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Happy Thursday morning. It's a pre-Friday celebration. Yeah, baby. As we're feeling it, we're pumped up, we're ready to go. It's going to be a fun one today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go right to the phones, get your thoughts on this debate that happened yesterday. Good. Oh, we lost them. Give me a call back. We want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. Listener on Facebook as we go through this. Politics for the young generation. Insight from a 16-year-old. He says, what's the point of voting if the popular vote doesn't count? Can you give him a good explanation as to why electoral votes are not a good reason not to vote? It doesn't sound like the school's teaching children there's a chance of someone who gets the popular vote to win an electoral race. Really great question, and we've talked a little bit about this, but the Electoral College, let me just say, is one of the most important things that we can have in society. And the schools, I really hope, are teaching the fact that electoral colleges are really important. I know there's a movement today to try and repeal the electoral college and go to a popular vote. Let me tell you something. That is called democracy. That is not what we have in society in the United States. And that is one of the most dangerous things that we can do. Let me ask you something. If we want to do this, if you've seen a map, and I would recommend that you show this map to that 16-year-old and to these students, show the map of the blue and the red in the different areas and the patches in the country on who voted for what. And you'll notice that the little patch over here in California, the little patch over here in New York, the little patch over here in Florida, the little patch over here on the East Coast are the blue ones, and the entire rest of the map is red. Now, then ask, if we get rid of the Electoral College and we repeal it and we go to a popular vote, that essentially 4 states would decide the entire election on the national scale, and no one else's votes would count. Democracy is a mob rule mentality. Democracy of a popular vote means that on the playground, the 4 kids versus the 3 kids, the 4 kids can vote to take away all the toys from the 3 kids because they have the majority. That's all you need. All you got to do is be able to get the kids with the majority. You got to rally enough people just over there to say, you know what, we're going to take what you have because we have the right to do so. That's democracy. And it's a very dangerous thing. The Electoral College says, all right, you know what we're going to do is we're going to make this as fair as possible to protect under a constitutional republic, not a democracy, but a constitutional republic. We're going to defend the right for everybody to have a vote by saying, based on your population, you're going to get a point system for each state. Yes, obviously California, because you have way more of a population, you're going to have a few more points than some place like Kansas, who has 1.8 million registered voters. You're going to have a little bit more of a say. So that's why we have like 54, 52 electoral college votes in California versus the 7 or 8 that we have here in Kansas. So they still have a larger say, but the Electoral College goes towards somebody based on the popular vote that's in the state, and then we cast the vote to protect the states that have a lesser population. If you want to go back in history, it goes back to really the time of the Great Compromise that happened right before the Civil War, right around the time to where we started saying that individuals that were slaves are 3/4 of a person, the 3/4 vote, if you remember that compromise. And the reasoning was because the population of the South without the slaves, then there was a very small population, and their votes weren't counting when it came to governmental issues, when it came to the population size of the states, and that they didn't have much of a say. So they compromised and said, all right, I guess the slave's going to be worth something, and they ended up compromising that the slave was worth 3/4 of a person. And that way they could still have a little bit more of a population, and that way the Electoral College votes went back up a little bit, and then they had a little bit more influence, if you want to go historically. But democracy of a straight mob rule is a really dangerous thing, and we don't want something like that. The Electoral College protects the little man. The Electoral College protects the smaller populated areas from being dominated and never having a say. Because if that was the case, farmers, agriculture, people that living in rural communities, they would never have a voice again. They would never have a voice again. If we did that, let's say in Sedgwick County, Wichita would make every decision for everybody in the entire Sedgwick County, even if you didn't live in Wichita. People living in Goddard, people living in Cheney, people living in Clearwater, people living in Viola, people living in small little areas all around in Rose Hill and in Derby and all these other, none of you would actually have a voice. Nobody. Because Wichita would say, nope, we're going to make the decision. As you know, highly populated areas, predominantly a little bit more progressive. So if you remember, Hillary Clinton won by 2 million votes, 2.5 million votes in the popular vote over Donald Trump. It's because they all came from heavily populated cities and areas. Now, if you want that populated city and area to have the voice for everybody, then I guess vote for democracy and get rid of the Electoral College. To me, we're about defending the right for everybody to have a voice, and that's what the Electoral College does. The schools aren't teaching this. The schools aren't explaining that because there is a movement now, and that would make sense if the education system's not actually talking about that with the Electoral College. If they're not explaining that, then that's scary because that's why we're seeing a movement by the young generation today saying, we hate Donald Trump so much. Hillary Clinton won by the popular vote so much more. It's time to repeal the Electoral College and go to a straight popular vote because that's what we need. And popularity should win. It should be a popularity contest based on the number of people nationwide, not based on regions and based on protecting the rights of everybody's voice in certain regions of the nation. We should get rid of it. And if they don't understand it, then they would be, of course, in support of something like that because then it makes sense. Yeah, why not? Why not actually just go to a popular vote? That's a stupid thing, this is Electoral College. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's one of the most important things that we can have. I really hope they're teaching it. I hope that explains it. Play this back to your 16-year-old kid, and maybe that'll help them a little bit. Because that's scary if we don't understand. I got a lot of calls on the line. Don't go anywhere. Got to take a bottom-of-the-hour break. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. We'll play some more clips from the debate. A lot of other topics that came up, including, yes, one of our favorite topics with marijuana and sports gambling online. Now that that's been legalized at the federal level, what's going to happen here in Kansas and where do our candidates for the governorship stand on that issue? We'll talk about that and more when we come back. Stay here.
The latest news from the Big Talker, KQAM.
It's time for Reason.
But conservatism, that is not dead. Actually, we're going back to that, and we're doing that in very large steps. We are repealing government mandates. We're repealing big government regulations. We're getting the economy going again. We're focusing on the private sector. We're doing some really great things that lead to what the Tea Party's been fighting for a really long time.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, 36 minutes past the hour. I could just listen to this jam forever.
Put me to sleep.
This is good stuff right here. No. This is like soothing, like after you do certain products and you're sitting in your couch or something.
Oh my gosh.
Kidding. Yeah, me. Yeah. You know me. That's the way I roll.
Whoa.
Welcome in 316-721-8255.
Realizing, of course, I'm fresh off a trip to Colorado, and then I come back and you say something like that.
Gummy bears have infiltrated. What can I say? 316-721-8255. This portion of The Voice of Reason brought to you by Riverside Cafe. 3 locations, 2 in Wichita, 1 in Derby, 9125 West Central Avenue, 739 West 13th, and 824 North Baltimore in Derby. We got your complimentary burger and fries we'll give to you by the end of the segment.
Craig Mead and I tried to fix this 2 weeks ago.
You know what?
Complimentary.
It's a complimentary. Also, I do have we were going to give this away. We just got the copy a couple of days ago. Travis Smith, author of the book Superhero Ethics. We're going to do a package deal for you today. And so we'll give you the burger and fries along with the the copy of the book, Superhero Ethics, right there. We got some calls on the line. Let's go to them. Your thoughts on the debate on everything happening at 316-721-8255. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Good morning, Jim. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Hey, I wanted to correct a couple of things you just said, but I've got a comment on the debates.
Okay.
it was a 3/5 compromise, not 3/4.
Oh, you're right, 3/5, yes.
And it was during the creation of the Constitution itself, in order to get all of the states to sign on and ratify the Constitution, they had to compromise to keep things. The whole reason for the 3/5 compromise was so that the northern anti-slave people would be able to keep enough power away from the entrenched southern slaveholders,
sure,
so that they could repeal and abolish slavery. And in fact, in 1807, it became illegal to import slaves. However, once the slaves were smuggled in by blockade runners into the rivers and estuaries in the South, once they were on land and sold as private property, it was not illegal in the states.
Right.
So
right. Well, and you're right. And there's a lot of history that goes, and we could do an entire 3-hour show on the history of that time, because I'm fascinated by that time era really from the Revolution up to the Civil War. I mean, it's really interesting to see the history of the country and how we tried to adapt, and the conversion from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution. I was just using that as the example when we talk about the popular vote with the Electoral College.
I'm glad you're. Here's the thing. And it's not that just California would rule the whole country. If you live in Kansas, Alaska, Wyoming, and you want to vote in the presidential election and have your vote actually count, you have to have the Electoral College. But even, if it was all popular vote, even in California, it would be Los Angeles and San Francisco that ran the entire state. New York City would run New York State. Houston and Dallas would run Texas. And those areas, the sanctuary cities, where they are currently allowing illegal aliens to vote, and and the newsmen people are criticizing Chris Kobach because he's trying to stop the illegal people from voting and stuff.
Yeah, terrible thing, right? That's a terrible thing. Yeah.
Hey, Jim, I got one more question for you real quick.
Go ahead.
Is it complimentary or complimentary?
I would say it is free.
See? You know what? Well done. I'll take that one. Appreciate it very much. There you go. That's a little stickler with you there. It's like roof or roof.
No, it's... Andy, you're all by yourself on this one, and you struggle with that. You struggle with somebody not buying into it.
There are dialects that sometimes you just kind of roll with, and it's okay. Okay, so is it financing or is it financing?
Well, that can go either way.
See? Oh, but complementary can't.
Andy, you're making this up. It's complimentary. There's that period. Stop. Basta.
Complementary.
Now,
there you go.
Big debate happening. Not a debate, but a forum, if you will. Candidate forum happening this Saturday, Kansas State Fairgrounds.
Going to be a big one.
It'll be at the Bretts and Young Arena, getting underway at 11 o'clock. They'll kick it off with, at 10 o'clock, the current, at 10 o'clock, Jeff Caldwell.
Libertarian.
He'll be talking about the governor's race.
2% of the vote right there.
10:40 will be a local representative, Jason Probst from up there in Reno County area. This is all building up to the big stuff that happens with the gubernatorial candidates.
Well, it's going to be really big.
Greg Orman talking at 12:40. He'll be followed by Chris Kobach at 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
2 o'clock, Derek Schmidt will talk about the Attorney General's office. And then at 2:20, Laura Kelly and Lynn Rogers will talk about their race for governor and lieutenant governor.
If you want to be involved in politics, you want to see the candidates, the Kansas State Fair, the way to do it is this Saturday with the political day. It is kind of fun. Now, I don't know, did you see the debate yesterday for the governor's race?
I saw there was a debate. I did not, and I've, of course, heard about it because I didn't watch it? No. I've taken excerpts. I've taken the attacks against Kobach, and about.
Well, it was pretty interesting, and I want to see
he brushes it off. He's Teflon,
Well, I mean, everybody, they kind of went back and forth, but it was kind of interesting to watch, and I can't wait to see part dos when it comes to this weekend with the state fair. You did, you kind of joked about the whole Colorado thing. They did bring up pot in the debate yesterday.
Oh, really?
They did. They talked about.
Is that why you started playing this music this morning?
That was just my awesome rotation of super, super cool music right there.
Anyway, I digress.
Do you even know who that was?
I don't.
See what I have to deal with.
Does anybody know who that was?
Okay, that would be Zach Wild.
Okay, Zach.
Go
Greatest
Zach. Awesomeness that we listened to. Anyways,
they talked about pot, Andy.
So they did talk about pot. Laura Kelly made a comment, and it was a two-part question about the pros and cons of whether you support legalization of pot and the online sports gambling that the federal government has now pawned back down to the states to decide on whether the states should be able to legalize sports gambling or not.
They tied those two together?
Yeah, on whether they supported one
People
or the
who are
other.
smoking pot they're not going to get on and bet.
Oh, come on.
They're going to be eating Doritos.
Well, they are going to be eating Doritos while they're watching some kind of game and be like, I bet you 2 Cheetos that they can jump really high.
Yeah. So, but they tied those two together.
They did.
Okay.
I would support legalization of medical marijuana. I think it's past time for us to do that. I don't think Kansas, in particular the legislature, is ready to go full bore on recreational marijuana. And I also think people need to recognize that is not going to be our budget panacea. The more as states legalize marijuana, we'll see a significant decrease in revenues provided to the state. So I don't want anybody to get the idea that that's how we're going to fund our schools. It won't happen. Sports betting, I'm fine with. It'll bring in some revenue, but again, it's not the kind of thing that's going to be able to substitute for a sound tax structure.
I'm actually kind of shocked that she didn't embrace the whole Democrat. Yeah, it's obvious that we need to support not only the legalization of medical marijuana, but recreational as well. I'm really kind of shocked that Laura Kelly didn't go down that road. Yeah, we can look at medical marijuana. That's great. But, it's not going to really bring in a whole lot of revenue like everybody's talking about. So we really shouldn't focus a whole lot of attention on that and make that as a basis of a revenue source for the state of Kansas. So, let's support medical marijuana, but don't anticipate it to be that big of a thing. I'm kind of shocked by that response.
Are you disappointed?
Well, I'm not disappointed. I'm just a little
surprised. Does that make her a more viable candidate?
Do you hear the excitement in her voice? Yeah, I support medical marijuana.
Well, she's pretty chill. It sounds like herself.
You should have seen the angry looks that she had sometimes when she got attacked by Kobach or Orman.
Oh, really?
It was very funny. Yeah, you see some of those funny faces like Hillary Clinton.
There?
She just had that. You can't say it on the radio, but she had that look.
RBF?
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
I don't know what that acronym is. I don't even know where I pulled that from. I don't know how that came out.
Yeah, see, had no idea. It's like that Hillary Clinton style.
Ugh.
Yeah. This was Chris Kobach.
No on medical marijuana, yes on sports betting. Let's look at medical marijuana first. Look, every state that's tried medical marijuana legalization has found that it becomes a ridiculously open gateway for people to just use it for recreational purposes. Sure, people who need it for medical purposes also get it, but the processes for the doctor's note are laughable, and people use it recreationally as well in those states. So no, I don't favor medical marijuana legalization. I do favor doing things to fast-track access to the CBD, the beneficial component of marijuana that actually does provide pain relief, and the FDA is on the verge of approving that in pill form. There are already oil versions of it. So we as a state and as government can certainly try to facilitate access to the medically beneficial component of marijuana, but the notion that, hey, we'll just say it's okay for medical purposes and everything will be solved, simply not realistic.
Okay, Chris, let me clue you into something here, Chris.
I thought that made sense.
CBD is already readily available in Kansas, in Wichita. I use it.
That's what he said.
Yeah. No, well, he was talking about fast track. It made it sound like fast tracking.
No, fast tracking for more pharmaceutical, like the pills that are coming out for the seizures and the more mainstream CBD that's going to be for medical purposes. That stuff's already happening through the pharmaceutical industry and through the pills and through everything and the oils that are already available. So what's the point of legalizing medical marijuana when the purpose of the medical side is the CBD that we already have available to us? That was the point that he made.
Okay, that's not how I heard it. He made. I don't know. For some reason, it came across to me as if he was saying that let's do this, and it's something that's already being done. I don't know.
Well, yeah, the CBD's already been, and then when it came to the sports gambling,
Sports betting, we'll see how much revenue it generates. I agree with Senator Kelly. It may not generate that much, but certainly it's not something that I think the legislature should prohibit.
There you go. So there's that.
And Kobach speaking, though, as if, I'm sorry, are you expecting me to defend and agree with everything on Kobach? Because it's not going to happen.
Well, no, your thoughts on that.
But the thing of it is, I mean, he speaks as if nobody's using marijuana in the state of Kansas, which... Great, Chris. Okay, nobody's using pot. So I guess, yeah, that makes a lot of sense what you said, because nobody in the state of Kansas would be using marijuana illegally. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Greg Orman's response here as well.
Obviously, any doctor who is able to prescribe a Schedule II narcotic should be able to prescribe medical marijuana.
Bingo.
I think we've seen things like opioids be far more addictive and far more damaging to our communities than medical marijuana would be. And I've seen up close the impact of this. I traveled to Colorado recently and saw a young man who had to flee with his mother from Kansas and ultimately got treatment in Colorado, prevented him from having 200 seizures a day, and now he's been seizure-free for 21 weeks. So I think that's important. In terms of recreational use, I don't believe we should be arresting, booking, trying, and incarcerating a teenager for buying a dime bag of weed. But by the same token, I would treat it as a citable offense the same way we deal with a speeding ticket. You're caught with recreational quantities, you get a ticket. Sports betting, yes. People are going to bet on sports anyway, given what the courts have ruled. We might as well get some of the benefit of it.
I do agree with that sense of the sports gambling, but come on, we're not arresting 8 to 16-year-old kids because they have pot on them. We're not doing that.
Do you know that, Andy?
It's not
How do you know
happening.
that? How do you make that
law
statement?
enforcement. I've talked to numerous law enforcement
Really? And
in
they
Colorado
say that
and
kids,
here.
Okay.
It's not, are you smoking pot in your basement? We need to arrest you now. It's not happening. If you're already doing a traffic violation, if you're committing a crime and you have pot on you, that's an added a deal on whatever you're doing. They're not arresting you just because they saw pot on you and they're going after you. It's not happening. Law enforcement has way better things to be doing than saying, hey, you got pot, I'm going to come after you now. That's not happening. That is the false narrative, this whole this war on drugs deal of how terrible it is and how we need to legalize it so that way we can stop it. That's not happening. Got to take a break here.
Before I rebuttal.
Oh, do you want to?
No, I'm just going to say, out of all three of them that just spoke on the whole marijuana issue, I would give Greg Orman my win on that debate.
There you go. Very interesting. Well, surprisingly, he was about the only one that was in favor of a little more lenient enforcement on something like that.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm not saying hang them up by their thumbnails or whatever, but and the other
that
thing
sounds
is,
interesting.
Yeah, well, it's an ancient Chinese secret.
Well, then we have that. Your complimentary burger and fries, Riverside Cafe, 3 locations here in the area, 2 in Wichita, 1 in Derby. We got that for you right now. Also, a copy of the book, Superhero Ethics. We talked to Travis Smith on Friday last week. We got a copy of the book. We'll do a package deal right now. We'll do caller number 3, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. 10 minutes at the top of the hour. James Thompson, Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District, coming on in the 8 o'clock hour to kick off hour number 3. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
4 minutes at the top of the hour. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, making it happen, doing the thing, advancing conservatism on a daily basis. Welcome in, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Congratulations to Steve winning the copy of the book Superhero Ethics by Travis Smith, along with the complimentary, I'm going to try and say it the Rick Everett way, the complimentary, whatever. The complimentary burger and fries, Riverside Cafe, 3 locations here in the area. Appreciate Riverside Cafe partnering up with us on that one. 316-721-8255. Lots more ground to cover today. We haven't gotten to everything that we need to. A lot of audio clips still from the governor's debate yesterday in Kansas City. from the PBS station hosting that one, along with the Bar Association up in the area, Laura Kelly, Chris Kobach, Greg Orman, as that one's heating up again. Another debate coming up this weekend at the Kansas State Fair. That's going to be at, 11 o'clock noon up there. We'll have more information coming up. It is Candidates Day up at the State Fair on Saturday as well, so a lot of the candidates going to be up talking with you. Meeting you. If you have any questions, want to talk about their platforms, you can definitely do that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. For anybody that is the kind of the political gurus that we are, this is our season, baby. I always say this is really our Super Bowl. I mean, we get a whole nice, not only leading up to primaries, but then leading up to the general election, watching how everything goes down in the activism in the area. And I will say, coming from the conservative standpoint, it is fun to see the activism, but watching the other side in the activism going on there as well is really intriguing. It's really fun to see where it's going to come out. I mean, in Wichita, we're kind of the place for it. We're kind of the heartland when it comes to, I always say Kansas, we're kind of under the microscope for the rest of the nation on what we do. The rest of the nation kind of follows. As you know, the national movement of the Brownback tax experiment that was the big news in Louisiana kind of did the same thing. And the job creation for GDP growth. Kansas, one of only 3 states in the entire nation last year with negative GDP growth. Whatever that comes down to and the reasoning for it, that's open for debate and discussion. But it is what we do in Kansas really sets the tone for the rest of the nation. And I think that's really important for us to remember as we go into the election for statewide House races, for congressional races, for the governor's race, on what we do in Kansas really has an impact at the federal level. I mean, to look right now, with the Trump administration, we have Mike Pompeo up there. Chris Kobach did some stuff up there. Alan Cobb had done some stuff at the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there's a lot of influence right now at the federal level coming from the state of Kansas. So we'll talk about some of that when we come back as well. Hour number 3, we got some more clips from the governor's debate. Plus, we have two great candidates and interviews coming up. Hour number 3. When we come back in studio with us, James Thompson, Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District, in studio to chat a little bit. And at 8:30, Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, will recap his take on the debate from last night and getting set for the governor's debate on Saturday. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 3, The Voice of Reason, coming up. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
All summer long, we've been talking about appropriations bills. What's happened? We haven't passed a farm bill. We haven't passed any appropriation bills. We haven't built the wall. We haven't funded the wall. We haven't reformed SNAP. We haven't reformed Social Security. We haven't cut any of the social spending. We haven't done anything that we said we were going to do, and then we wonder why people are upset with the Republican Party.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, baby, welcome into the Voice of Reason. Hour number 3 of the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting as well on TV, KGPT TV channel 2610. Good morning, welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We are on Facebook Live as well. Big show today. It's been a lot of fun recapping the governor's debate yesterday. We'll touch on more of that in just a bit, but we have a guest in studio, and we have a limited time, so I want to jump right to him. He is the Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District, Mr. James Thompson, in studio. James, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you coming on the show. I know you've been a busy guy, and appreciate some time.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
How's the campaign going so far?
It's going great. It's going great. We've been out in all 17 counties, making sure we're talking to everybody and making sure that we're giving them an option and making sure that we're trying to hold Ron Estes' feet to the fire and get to some debates.
Sure, and I know that some you guys just did a public forum in Pratt, and that was kind of interesting. You have another debate. I believe the next one's October 5th. Is that the next one?
That's correct.
Okay, and that one should be A fun one, and more to come. I'm hearing, hopefully, right?
Well, we hope, but we can't get anything out of Ron Estes to go and do other debates. So
sure. Let's talk a little bit about your platform. And as you know, I appreciate you coming on because being a conservative show, this is kind of reaching across the aisle a little bit. But I enjoy that, and I appreciate that. I've learned and listened to your background a little bit, and you talking about kind of how you grew up. And I got to say, you are a success story. And I've put that many times on the show before, that you're a success story. You've talked about being homeless. You've talked about growing up in really great poverty in Florida. You've talked about how you've worked up. You went in the military, and we thank you for your service, and how you become now a civil rights attorney, correct?
Correct.
And it's a very fascinating story. It really shows the success of the American dream. Is that a good way to put it?
I think so. I think that, in America, we're taught that, if you work hard and you keep your nose to the grindstone, that you can succeed in life. And so that was a thing that I believed. But getting educated was a big part of that as well. And I was fortunate enough to have had a teacher who told me, hey, you need to get educated if you want to do something with your life. And so that's what I did. And so I'm here today.
Sure. Talk about your platform based on that background, your platform of what you're running on. And again, coming from a little bit from the other side, what do you want to do? What do you want to run on? And what do you want to do in D.C. if you get up there?
Well, I want to make sure that we're protecting the things that helped me get to where I am today. So making sure, one, we're protecting our veterans, of course. As a veteran, very much wanting to make sure we continue doing that. And I've spent my entire professional career trying to help veterans move forward, making sure that we're protecting our military, making sure that they have the things that they need. But also making sure that we're protecting education, making sure we're protecting that social safety net that we have out there. Because grew up, I was a recipient of welfare when I was a kid, free lunches. The GI Bill helped put me through school. These are all social safety programs that we need to make sure that we protect and have in place so that there can be more stories like mine, that where somebody raises themselves from poverty. We can talk about pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but we've got to make sure that these people have boots to do that. So,
is there a difference between and from our side, we like to say, we like the hand up, not the handout sort of thing, and we like to be able to, as you mentioned, the program to help people get out of that. We don't like people being stuck in that rut sort of thing.
Well, I think that you hit it on the head right there. And that's really what I like too. I want to make sure that we have options in place to help people when they need it. Not it should be a safety net, not a bed for people to lie in. So it should be there to catch them when they fall and bounce them back up so that they can get back to being productive members of our society. But we shouldn't depend on it as a way of life.
Sure. Going into that as well, I know you had the rally with Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I have to admit they're kind of the butt of my jokes at many times on the show for kind of the more progressive mentality. But how did that rally go?
It went great. As far as I know, it was one of the largest we've had here in Wichita in a long time. We had close to 5,000 people at it. It was phenomenal. It was really motivational to get out there and talk about helping working people and seeing everybody excited and coming together. It was a great event.
I got to ask, going to that side, right now I've seen, coming kind of the outside looking in, the Democratic Party right now is really torn, really divided. I think Bernie Sanders caused a lot of that. There was kind of the mainstream establishment Democrats, the Hillary Clinton style. The presidential run really divided it with Bernie Sanders coming in, of the quote unquote Democratic socialism, which I want to get to in a minute as well. But the different outsider mentality to a degree, but kind of the more progressive socialist mentality. Is that a healthy thing, and is that good for the state of Kansas, do you think?
Well, number one, I want to make it very clear here. I know you and a lot of other people like to call me a socialist on a regular basis, and that's just simply not true. It's just not what I am. I do believe in, like I said, having a social safety net, but I believe in a free market economy. I believe in competition. And so the vision, I think, that Bernie brings, that I liked, that I talk about a lot, is making sure that we're returning power back to working people and not just having all of our power invested in big corporations in this country. We have an opportunity right now to change things. I think that with Bernie and with Trump both, we saw people that are tired of establishment politics. That's what I am. I'm tired of establishment politics. I'm tired of both sides of the aisle getting corporate PAC money and doing whatever their corporate masters tell them to do, as opposed to what working people, our farmers, our manufacturers, what they need. So when we're out trying to push a message, it's, look, let's have capitalism, let's have a free market economy, but let's make sure that we don't forget that working people have to be protected. It's a government of the people, not of corporations.
Sure. And I would agree. The people definitely need that. So the question is, how do we get the power to the people. I've always been very critical of unions. I'm not a fan of the unions. I think that the unions misrepresent people and kind of control them as government would, as if the government came to power as well. And as you mentioned, I mean, I would agree with you. The free market society is the way to allow the people to have that. And as small as we can maintain the government and keep that as limited as possible, I think that allows people to have the control, doesn't it?
Well, but see, it depends on which part of the government you're wanting to keep small, because, you know, my understanding of conservatism, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that you're wanting less business controls but more personal controls. And I believe the opposite. I believe that we ought to have less personal controls. I don't care what you do in your bedroom. I don't care who you love. I don't care what you do with your body, as long as it doesn't affect everyone else and as long as two consenting adults. I believe big business in particular has to be regulated. Now, we need to get out of the way of small business and individuals to make sure that they can get out and do the things that they want to do.
Where's the line between the two, small business and big business?
Well, and that's something that we're going to have to sit down and talk about. I mean, I would say that, you know, any company that's got, 100 or less employees would be considered a small business. When I say big business, I'm talking about the Walmarts, the Amazons, companies like that, Apple, that have $1 trillion in worth, as we've just seen with Amazon. And
started off as a small business,
right? But then as they've gotten bigger, we've, instead of helping out the working, we're subsidizing the big corporations, and we don't want to pay they don't want to pay their employees an appropriate wage at Walmart, and so their people are on welfare and things like that. Well, why should we subsidize that? They're the business. They're the ones making billions of dollars. Why do we, the taxpayer, have to subsidize big business? It shouldn't work that way.
I would agree with that. I mean, and that to me goes into a crony capitalist style of subsidizing corporation as opposed to a complete free market thing. And that, I think, leads into, and I know we're getting short on time here, but that kind of leads into the idea of like a minimum wage standard, to where I'm not a fan of a government regulated minimum wage, because I think that affects the private market too much, as opposed to letting the market kind of set its own rates to create a healthy rate for individuals to be able to live off of, based on inflation, based on cost of living, so on and so forth.
Well, but I think that we've got to have balance there. And so when we're talking about balance, that means that we can't allow big business to get so big that it controls the marketplace to the detriment of all the workers. And we can't allow the government to get so big that it controls business to the point that nobody can make any money. And we can't have workers controlling everything to the point where business can't make money or anything else. So it's got to be balanced. And when we're looking at big business in particular right now, I think that it's off the scales. And so I do believe in a minimum wage, and we have to have a minimum wage, because big businesses have the ability to negotiate out and to select people that they want. You said you don't believe in unions. I believe strongly in unions, because people have to be able to come together and collectively bargain together, because individually they don't have the power against a big business. So
I know we disagree, and we don't have time. I'd love to be able to spar a little bit more on that. I got two quick questions for you as well. Sure. Second Amendment, I know last year you campaigned on being pro-Second Amendment. You are in the military, that sort of thing. Kind of against the narrative of the more progressive Democrats right now, the wanting to ban the AR-style rifle, that sort of thing. What is your stance? Are you still supportive of the AR and the Second Amendment?
Yes and yes. I build ARs. I like shooting ARs. I learned how to shoot them in the military. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the Constitution. I'm a civil rights attorney, so I believe in all of the amendments, not just one or two of them. I believe that they're all important. The AR-15, to me, is something that I enjoy shooting. Now, what I believe in, and the reason like Moms Demand Action endorsed me, or it made me a gun sense candidate, even though I believe in the Second Amendment, is that I believe in gun safety. I mean, I believe in having responsible gun ownership. When I was in the military, before I was ever allowed to fire my M16, we went through 2 weeks of training, and I had to learn how to disassemble it, put it back together. I had to learn what the bullets do, how they travel, the trajectory, everything else. We don't have that in our society. And so somebody that's 18 years old can walk into Walmart, buy a gun, and have no idea how it operates, how to use it, what it does, or anything else. And so what I'd like to see is the same thing that responsible gun owners that are friends of mine that are part of the NRA also believe in. Require a class when somebody goes to buy a gun for the first time, so they at least have to learn basic safety, and making sure that we are employing strategies that promote safety, not just gun manufacturing.
Sure. Last question. I know you said that you're not a socialist. The Bernie Sanders-like movement, the democratic socialism, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I still don't understand it. I don't get it. What is the difference between socialism and democratic socialism?
Define socialism for me.
It would be the collective from the government distributing and controlling. To me, that would be
Okay. The basic definition of socialism is that it is controlling the means of production in society. So you're controlling business to the point where government owns business. I do not believe in that. Democratic socialists don't believe in that. Democratic socialists believe in having a tighter rein on business. I'm a progressive. I'm a practical progressive, too. I mean, I believe in a free market economy. I believe in having competition. With our health care insurance, I believe that we should have private insurers and Medicare. Medicare should be available to anyone who wants it and force the insurance companies to compete with Medicare so that they have to bring their prices down.
Can you compete with a government entity that's not necessarily looking for a profit, though, or looking for the bottom line?
Well, but see, what I've always heard is that private, business can do it better than government. Well, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. Put that private business and
I agree. I mean, more competition is what's going to create it.
Well, right. And so, I mean, we have a 3% overhead with Medicare. It's the most successful insurance that's out there, and because of that low overhead. But we've got to reform it too, though. I mean, Medicare doesn't have the option to negotiate out drug prices, and so the crony capitalism that you're talking about, got in there and they fixed that negotiations so that you couldn't do that. And so our drug prices are out of control. So we've got to reform that and allow everybody to negotiate fairly, and stop putting restrictions on the free market like that. So
sure. James Thompson, Democratic candidate, 4th Congressional District. We'd love to get you back in and do it again a little bit later and do a little more extensive, because I think this was fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Appreciate it very much. 20 minutes past the hour, James. We appreciate it very much. Good luck to you, my friend.
Hey, thank you.
Very good. Got to take a break. We'll get your phone calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
26 minutes past the hour. Thanks again to James Thompson, Democratic candidate, 4th Congressional District, joining the program. That was an interesting conversation. Maybe we can do it again. We need more time. Your thoughts, did he break down and define enough the difference between socialism and democratic socialism? Did he do enough? Did that make sense? I'd love to hear your thoughts. 316-721-8255. 26 minutes past the hour. We got Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, coming up in just a few minutes. But let's take a phone call here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen again.
Helen, how are you?
Well, he's kind of not very clear, really.
You didn't think that really described the difference there?
No, I think it's ambiguous.
All right. Well, let's see. I appreciate the call, Helen. Let's take another phone call here before a bottom of the hour break. Good morning. What's your name?
Sue.
Hey, good morning, Sue. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, living the dream every day.
Good. Well, it's kind of funny because the example he chose didn't really make a lot of sense. He said socialists basically want the government to control business and own business.
Right.
But democratic socialists just want the government to have a tight grip on business. So doesn't that tight grip eventually end in the government owning?
Well, you're right, and that's why I had to throw in there when he brought up. I mean, and it was the prime example. I wish we had more time, because he brought up the example of let's create Medicare as a competitive thing for private insurance companies, so that way we can lower the prices and everything which is great. Let's lower the prices, but how do you compete? How do you have a grip or have a control by having a government option to compete when the government option's not looking for a profit, so you can drive everybody else out of business, then control the industry the way that Obamacare's done? Look how many different insurance companies have been kicked out of different states. And there's lack of competition, and there's insurance companies that shut down, and they've raised their premiums and they've raised their deductibles. It's because of the government option that they wanted to bring in as a competitive market option, and it didn't work that way because they drove everybody out of the business. That's the way it works.
Right, and not only do they not care about making a profit, they can print as much money as they want to continue to fund it and get it as large as they need it to be. There's no end to the money supply.
Come on, the rich need to pay their fair share.
Wrong.
The rich got to pay they got to redistribute it. They got to take it from the rich and give it. I mean, the corporation's just too big. I mean, I appreciate James, and I really wish he could come on the show and talk a little bit more, a little bit deeper in there. But what I heard was from me was that, I'm not a socialist. I don't believe in socialism taking over everything, but at the same time, I do believe in the socialism light. And I guess that maybe that's what democratic socialism is?
Yes.
I guess.
Exactly.
Sue, appreciate it very much. Got some other calls on the line, but when we come back as well, Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, he'll be joining us. We'll break down that interview with James Thompson. We'll talk with Greg. We'll get your thoughts. We'll cover the debate last night. Get ready for the state fair tomorrow with the governor's debate on Saturday at the Kansas State Fair. There's too many things happening right now, which makes my job really easy. Bottom of the hour news coming up. This is The Voice of Reason.
Here's the latest from the KQAM News Center.
Wichita's fastest growing radio show. You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Great to have you today on a Thursday. It is a pre-Friday celebration. It is one of the greatest days of the entire week. Friday right around the corner. So I'm feeling a little sensitive right now. I'm feeling a little insecure. I'm feeling a little rejected. This is the second time. Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, hasn't called yet. Maybe he'll be able to give us a call here in a minute. No, he's a busy guy, but this is the second time in 2 weeks that we had it scheduled and hasn't called. I'm feeling a little sensitive and rejected now. He doesn't want to talk to me. So it is open line to you at 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We'll try and get Greg Orman on the program maybe before the end of the show today, maybe tomorrow before the state fair and before the debate on Saturday. We'll try and get him back on at some point. But since he didn't call in, then it's open line to you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Your thoughts on the conversation we had with James Thompson, Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District here in the Wichita and South Central Kansas area. Did he satisfy your curiosity on the difference between socialism and democratic socialism? Now, I give him credit. I love the fact that he came on. We could have gone two ways with this. We could have gone very, rah, I don't like your stances, rah. Or, what I like to do is, have the dialogue and test and challenge the platform. And it's very difficult sometimes to challenge the platform when you have 8 minutes to do it, but I want to challenge the platform. I did appreciate that he did say that he supports Second Amendment, including ARs. Now, being a Democrat, and if he goes into office, and if he did go in there, would he vote that way? I don't know. I mean, the special interests in the Democrat side are just as powerful as the Republican side, and the anti-gun lobby would be doing something about that. So I don't know, but I did appreciate the fact that he did say he supports ARs and the assault rifle, if that's what you want to call it, even though it's not really an assault, because it doesn't assault anybody. But, if he takes that. So I do appreciate that very much. But when it came down to the socialism versus democratic socialism, did that satisfy your taste? Did that satisfy your thoughts? Did that satisfy my understanding of the differences and what it sounded like, what it is, as Sue mentioned before the bottom of the hour, that it's socialism light? Democrat, and he said, you and everybody else say I'm a socialist and I'm not, but we support in a large, look, the safety net is fine. And I liked how he put it. It's a safety net, not a safety bed. I get that, but already social programs are 60+% of the entire federal budget. How much more do we need? How much more do we need? Is there abuse in the system? You betcha. Do we need to shorten it and cut it down a little bit? You betcha. Is it supposed to be just something to barely get by and it absolutely sucks to be on? Absolutely. Why does it need to be 60+% of our entire federal budget when it comes to social programs? Now, that includes Medicare and Medicaid, that includes SNAP, that includes WIC, that includes Social Security, that includes every social program at the federal level, 60+% of the budget. As many on the left side of the aisle say that, we need to keep kind of shorten the budget on the military spending because, we don't need to be in wars and all that. The military only spends close to 20% of the entire federal budget. Now, if you break it up to mandatory spending versus discretionary spending, that's a different story. But I don't like to do that because the budget is the budget, and wherever the money's going, that's kind of an important aspect. So I like to look at the budget as a whole because we do not need programs at the federal level to be on autopilot to grow by 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% every single year. And when you say, we're running into some shortfalls, we're running into spending issues, let's cut it back to only a 2% growth. Oh, he's cutting the program. He hates poor people. Give me a break. And that's really what the progressives said. And that's kind of what he said, but not really. So your thoughts on it, your thoughts on the interview. I appreciate it very much. Again, hopefully we can do it again. I love the fact that we can have a dialogue. We disagree. We don't agree really with anything that each other said, really. But we had the dialogue. That's where it starts. Maybe many on the progressive side, the protesters, the rabble-rousers, the ones that are standing up and trying to protest the Kavanaugh interviews, the ones that are trying to stop Donald Trump, the ones that are trying to block him. I wanted to ask, and I didn't get a chance to, but would you repeal the Trump tax cuts? Because it sounds like, and I know what the response would be. Here's exactly what the response would have been. James Thompson, do you support the repealing of the Donald Trump tax cuts? Why, yes, Andy, I do support the repealing of the Donald Trump tax cuts because the corporations and the big people with lots of money have all the money, and they're the ones that got the tax break. And then I would have responded by saying, James Thompson, do you realize that the top 20% of the income earners in the country pay 80% of all the income taxes? So when you do a tax cut, then, the people that pay the taxes are the ones that are going to get the tax breaks. And I would have responded that way. Didn't get a chance to do that one, but that's how that conversation would have gone because that's just the way it is. But to hate on corporations, to hate on business. Look, Google started as a small business. Walmart started as a one-shop small business. That's the beauty of the American dream. That's the beauty. And I gave him credit for that. James Thompson is the example of the American dream, starting off poor, starting off homeless, working your way up. Yeah, using the system as a net to get you on your feet and to help you educate yourself and become a civil rights attorney. That is a success story, and we should be very proud of that because only in America could you do something like that. Only in the United States could you have that opportunity. Only here. But now do I say, James Thompson, you're a civil rights attorney. You're a very successful civil rights attorney. You do a lot of stuff. You're a millionaire now, let's say, and you've grown and grown and grown. I need to cap your profits. Now, you're a business guy. You're a smart guy. You've helped a lot of people. You've done this. You've made a lot of money. Now I need to cap it and stop how much you're using and how much you're making because you shouldn't do that and you deserve no more. Do I have the right to tell him that? No. Then why does the government have the right to come and tell Walmart or Google or any other of these companies, good for you. You've been a successful company. You're not allowed to have any more. We're cutting you off. What's the point of succeeding then? What's the point of getting to that level if you can't continue to grow and continue to invest and continue to build? Do you realize how many people are hired by Walmart? Do you realize how many people are hired by Google? Do you realize how many people benefit from that income because we didn't take someone else's piece of the pie? We created our own. That's what capitalism is. The government does not have a right to tell a business, you're cut off, dude. It's not the drunk at the end of the bar saying, dude, we're cutting you off. You can't have any more. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the business that should be continuing to grow. And no matter how much wealth that you have, you know what? That's great. You're providing opportunities for other people as well. We're not enslaving people. We're hiring them to do a service. Yes, I benefit because it's my company. It's my service. They're benefiting because they're getting to craft their skill, they're getting to work, and they're getting to create an income, and what they do with it is what they want to, is all the prerogative to them. That's capitalism. Socialism and democratic socialism, we're going to do it in a democratic process. We're going to do socialism light to where we don't control the industry, we just put caps on it so we contain it. What? We create government options to compete with the private sector, or we don't have to look at the profits so we can run them out of business at times and then lead to socialism. That's not socialism. That's where him and I completely disagree. Let's get your thoughts on this. 316-721-8255. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Going once, going twice. All right, we'll try and come back to you. Stay on the line. 316-721-8255. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
My name is Eddie.
Eddie, good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Hey, that was a beautiful interview that you gave.
Thank you.
Yes.
I wanted to be kind of tough, but I wanted to be nice at the same time. I have a hard time doing that.
You know what? You have, sir, you have always been polite. to people with opposite views.
I mean, I
Always
could have
and
gone
forever.
for the Mark Levin, like, shut up, you dummy, I'm going to educate you. But that's just not my personality. I want to ask tough questions and defend their position. But he's a guest, and now it's different if a caller comes in and calls me a jerk and kind of goes off on me. But as a guest, I obviously keep it nice and civil and relaxed. But at the same time, let's ask some tough questions.
Sure. Talk about tough questions. That Tallahassee mayor that's running for governor down there in Florida?
Yes.
Are you aware that he is under investigation for all the corruption in his office?
I was not aware of that, no.
Are you aware that it was so corrupt that two FBI agents posing as landowners or interpreter, are you aware of that? I'll tell you what, and this will blow your mind. I found out this by Googling the Tallahassee newspapers, and it turns out the Tallahassee Democrat. I thought, okay, it's going to be another Wichita Eagle. The Tallahassee Democrat, which is the main newspaper down there, does not like this man.
Sure. Well, that's interesting. I had no idea. I'll have to look into that a little bit. Now, you're right, the Democratic candidate down there that is running for governor in the state of Florida. I appreciate that, Eddie, very much. I do want to get to our next guest on the show, and I appreciate him calling in here, but independent candidate for the governor's race. Really excited to have him on the program as he's coming on the show right now, Mr. Greg Orman. Let's see if this is the right line here. Greg, are you there, my friend?
I am, Andy. Good to be with you.
Hey, Greg, I appreciate you calling in, sir. You guys are busy. How's the campaign going?
It's going great. We had our first debate yesterday, and I think it was a great opportunity to sort of contrast my, private sector experience, my experience making large, efficient companies more efficient, and how that, I think, makes me uniquely qualified to be governor.
Well, I did. You're right. I did get to watch the debate yesterday, and was that the first debate for the governor's race?
It was. It was the first one where all three of us were on the stage together.
Sure. It was a lot of fun to watch, and you're right. It really starts to begin to show the differences in many of the candidates and the different platforms and ideas. But you felt really good after that one, really going into the next one at the state fair.
Yeah, and the state fair debate, as you know, is a very different format. It's a lot more of a raucous crowd. There's a lot more interaction with the crowd, and so that'll obviously bring out a different side of the candidates as well. But again, it'll just give us an opportunity to demonstrate that I'm the only candidate here who really has the experience to do what we need to do to grow the Kansas economy and, be in a position to pay for all the things and all the investments that we'd like to make without having to raise taxes.
Sure. Well, and as you mentioned, I mean, you focused a lot of this on the debate yesterday about being a businessman and generating wealth and generating the economy, getting the GDP back. I mean, it was mentioned by somebody on the stage the fact that, right now in Kansas last year, we are one of 3 states in the country that had negative GDP growth at negative 0.1% last year. That's a scary thought. We need to get that back on track.
Yeah, that's very concerning. And, frankly, it's because I don't think over the last 20 years, really, we've had a proactive economic development strategy. We're competing with other states that really have their act together in that department. And so I think we have to look at Kansas's strengths, figure out how to leverage them. We've put a pretty detailed economic development plan on my website, ormanforkansas.com. But it starts with leveraging our strengths, recognizing what we're good at, and creating an environment where the private sector can use that to create jobs and opportunities for people, and the economic growth that brings with it additional taxes to fund some of the priorities we have, like roads and bridges and career and technical education and some of the other things that long term will pay good returns for us.
Sure, absolutely. You mentioned, let's get into some of the issues that were brought up during the debate yesterday, because I thought they were kind of interesting. One of them, and it ties right into economic growth and the jobs and everything that went along with it, but the prison reform came up, and different correction facilities and how we reform some of that, and that ties right into the economy of how do we get people, once they come out of a prison, out of a correction facility, to get them stable, get them jobs, have an economy that accepts them in that shape. What's your thoughts on when it comes to getting someone out of prison and be able to get the reform we need to get someone into the workforce?
Well, it all starts with training while they're in prison. There's a program up in the Kansas City area that trains prisoners in construction trades. It's a job area where we've generally had shortages. And what they found is if you get trained in a skill, you become a mason, you become a framer, you become a carpenter. The rate of recidivism is in the single digits compared to about 1 out of 3 people who ultimately end up reoffending if they don't have training. And so if we can couple that with some good public-private partnerships where private sector companies agree that when people go through these training programs in prison, they're going to hire them when they come out the other end. I think it's a win-win for everybody. We make sure that people are productive, that they're not taking some of our support resources, but are ultimately contributing, paying taxes, and rebuilding their lives and helping to build our economy.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of? And I know that we've worked a lot on this, and I got to give credit to Governor Brownback. I think he did a great job with some of that, with some of those reforms, with his mentorship program in the facilities. I got to tour through the one up in Hutchinson, through the corrections facility up there, and the different classes for plumbing or electrical work or whatever, where you can get licensed. They have the private companies that are coming in there to allow people to work and make a little bit of money, but get the experience, learn the stability, and those types of programs. Is that kind of what we're looking at for the potential to get someone off on a good track when they come out?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're looking at. And the private sector participation is important because it demonstrates a need for the jobs. Private sector companies not going to participate in some of those programs if they don't need the workers on the other end. And so I think it's the right way to do it. The last thing we would want is for government to decide that everybody should get trained in a particular skill, and then the private sector says that's not a skill we value.
Sure.
And so I think the private sector participation is critical there.
Sure, absolutely. We got just a couple minutes left before we let you go. Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, as the first debate under the belt for everybody, now going into the Kansas State Fair, and more debates to come very soon. One of the topics that came up with education and the education leading into the workforce and the training and everything that we need. One question came up about the constitutional amendment for the educational funding in the state of Kansas, and whether we should have a constitutional amendment or not. And your, I don't know if I have the clip in front of me here or not, your clip, this is what you had to say during that one.
I think it's helpful that the Supreme Court flagged this issue for us. Ultimately, it's up to the legislature and the governor to provide for suitable education. I don't think it makes sense to have a constitutional amendment while we're in the middle of a lawsuit. But I think the bigger issue here that we're facing is, as it relates to education, we're coming at it from answers driven by 2 failed playbooks. I hear from many on the far right, we need to go to private school vouchers. There's one private high school west of Wichita. How does a private school voucher solve a problem for a kid in Colby, Kansas? On the other side, we hear we need to pour hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into the top of the funnel. I want to do what a business person would do. I want to focus on the root cause of the problem. And ultimately, and my wife's a public school teacher, I support public schools. She said something to me that made a whole lot of sense, and that is the best education policy is a growing economy. If we grow our economy, we're going to have the ability to provide for public education in a suitable way without increasing taxes.
All right, so that was your comment there. The question that I had for you was, what do you think, the root of the problem for our education system? And I know you guys only had a minute, which you guys kind of cram a lot in there, but
Sure.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the constitutional amendment and the litigation that we have? How do we end the litigation so that way we don't need to have a constitutional amendment to try and keep the Supreme Court at bay?
Well, you're right. Debates are sort of an exercise in speed talking. You try to get in as much as possible. If you look at what's going on in education and you look at what we're trying to accomplish here, 2/3 of the achievement gap between low-income kids and high-income kids is caused by one thing, the summer learning deficit. Low-income kids don't have the same experiences that high-income kids have. My wife taught in a Title I school. What she found was she spent the first 4 to 6 to 8 weeks of any new semester in remedial work. Compound that over the first 8 years of a kid's school experience, and ultimately you end up with these big gaps in outcomes. And so I'm a big believer we need to do things like summer reading programs, summer learning programs, to help make sure that we address the root cause of the problem. And frankly, I think those programs are a hell of a lot cheaper than trying to put more and more money into the same system and the same approach. The other thing we've seen is, in her school and other examples, they had a very low high school graduation rate. I believe it was below 50%. They also had a transportation policy that said if you live within 2 miles of school, you got to find your own way to school. And so, kids were just not going to school. They didn't want to walk in the dark. They didn't want to walk through neighborhoods that they might have thought were a little unsafe. Maybe their parents didn't have a car. Maybe it was raining. And so they changed that policy and said, we're going to pick you up if you live outside of a half a mile radius, and the graduation rate went up into the mid-70s. Mm-hmm. And so, look, the buses were driving right by these kids' homes, their apartments, and not picking them up. And they made a simple change to a transportation policy and got far better outcomes. Those are the kinds of things we look for in the private sector. In the private sector, I'm looking for how can I get the best return on the investment that I spend. And if we can do that by making sure kids have books in the summer and making sure they have optional summer learning programs and, making sure they can get to school, that's a hell of a lot lower cost approach than some of the other things we're talking about.
Sure. Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race. Again, how can people get a hold of you guys if they want more information on your campaign?
I'm obviously on Twitter and Facebook, but our website is ormanforkansas.com. We've got a lot of material up there, and I'd love to hear from people.
Fantastic. Well, I'll be up at the State Fair on Saturday to be able to watch the debate and see you guys speak, so I look forward to seeing you up there, but good luck to you, and we'll chat again real soon, Greg.
Thanks, Andy. Good to be with you.
Always a pleasure right there. Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race. We'll take a quick break, wrap up the show today. A big show on The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Oh, the show goes by way too fast. Just a couple minutes to the top of the hour as we wrap up today on a Thursday. We'll recap all of this tomorrow on the Friday episode for your Free for All Friday. We'll get your thoughts on it, talk about all the interviews that we did, all the discussions that we had. We got more to come, but we're out of time. We're just out of time today. Where did the time go? Appreciate all the phone calls, all the conversations. Give us a call tomorrow on your Free for All Friday. Let us know your thoughts. We'll recap a lot of what we talked about today. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason, baby, on a Thursday. Everybody have a great day.